Yes, yeah. The supplier is concerned about making sure that his products are sold. And he knew that there were some issues here. And so he said, the supplier said, I'll pay for half of your fee to come in and do this. And that's what happened. But he had an axe to grind. The supplier wanted to be sure that this company continued to distribute their products. But in most farmers and ranchers, you don't have that kind of supplier. So you don't have that kind of motivation. So who do you suppose has to motivate you to become informed and do something? The mother. The mother has to do that. All right. But you yourselves have to do that to create that sense. Seek out the advisors that have the capacity to provide that kind of answer. Yes, sir?
Well, another problem you run into when the children try to initiate something like this, the parents see it as a self-serving kind of thing on the children's part, but they've got an answer, right?
Yeah. So how do you deal with this issue of, I mean, how can these two boys over here approach their stepfather about having some kind of agreement to buy out their interest, their minority interest in this corporation, without thinking, the stepfather thinking, what's going on here? What's it to them? I own and I control this business. And I think what happens in those scenarios is that there has to be a dialogue. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes you have to have an independent third party. Not someone that necessarily represents the father, but someone that can be objective, someone that can listen to their needs, listen to the father's needs, and take that generation gap that we see and bring it together and not tear it apart. But the tearing apart doesn't occur until when? Until something happens, and then it's too late to bring it together. So I'm suggesting that if you can't find someone in the family that is objective, you better seek someone outside that can represent the whole, not just the parts. And that's sometimes difficult because there's some people who say that this scoundrel here that is sleeping around doesn't deserve that business. Is there anybody in this audience that feels that way? Oh yeah, sure, there are people like that. Hey, and maybe that's true, but from a practical point of view, you heard the father say there is no value to this business. Unless we have an ongoing value. And the only way to have an ongoing value is have a relationship with a supplier that's useful.
And I just want to comment also about it really is easy to get into judging this. This couple, the second-born daughter and her husband, have two daughters, Carl?
Yes, yes.
And one of them was seriously deformed when she was born.
Clip.
Yeah, cleft lip, and has had dozens of operations.
Yes.
I mean, there's been tremendous stress on these two, tremendous stress. And there's some family kind of things that have gotten in the way in the marriage. And these folks, like many of us, I mean, have not gotten the kind of support that they need to grow their marriage. Like, I mean, one can understand that the problems that they're having because they also never really learned how to deal with each other, how to talk with each other. So I mean, there's many ways to kind of look at this kind of thing, but I just wanted to add that because it's not what it seems, and it's very seldom that I think those of us who work with family businesses really get to see the whole picture. And the whole picture is real important to understand. You know, I spent a day and a half with them, and I don't know half of what that family's dealing with. My guess is that they didn't mourn very well when the first mother died. They're a very repressive, emotional family. They really repress emotion. So there's a lot of things in here that one could understand why they're having these problems.
Precisely. And I would like to go on now. Now we have sort of a sense of the problem. Don and I and Fred would like to go on in terms of addressing these problems and what do we do? I mean, how does this family deal with it? Well, what we did is the first thing that we did, and what I want you to be aware of, is that my perception, and I'm not saying I'm wrong, I'm not saying I'm right, but my perception is that planning is really a journey. As Don says, it is a process, it's not a destination. And this took 2 years for us to develop this as it happened. Took 2 years. And I'm wondering about each of our families. Are all of our families static, or do they all move? Do they all change? Isn't it true that tax laws change, Mr. CPA? Isn't it true that agricultural policies change, Mr. Banker? You know, what the government says they're going to do today, they may do something different tomorrow. Isn't it true that the laws and the relationships change? And isn't it true that the valuations of these businesses change? Recognizing those changes as a process, as opposed to a destination, is the first step. So, as the attorney for this family, we're really talking about that lawyer has to know what those relationships are to give good legal advice to that father. Is that true? How many of your attorneys know that much about your lives and your relationships? Is there anyone? Yes. Your attorney knows, right? Oh. Yeah, see, you notice, why do you suppose his attorney knows what the relationships are? Probably his brother motivated him. Yeah. But it is, reasonably, it is really important. But how many of us want to share this private, sensitive information with the world? Well, if those people have the capacity to help create contracts and structure, that's important for them to know. Exceedingly important for them to know. The accountant. Here's a man who is a friend of this father. When I talked to him, he said, I didn't know this was going on in the family. How can he really be even a good accountant for the father if they've had that long-standing relationship without knowing some of this stuff that's going on? It would really be difficult for you to help that family without that knowledge, would it not?
Yes, it would be.
And so I'm saying that rather than pawn it off on the attorney or on the financial person or on the accountant, how many of us are really willing and able to share our inner thoughts and ideas and concerns? And then yet we're drafting trusts and wills and business agreements without the acknowledgement of those changes. I just don't think that's appropriate. What I'd like is I would like Fred to put on the screen here. We talked about the financial issues, and I think you had a question about that. Fred, I wondered if you'd put on the overhead where Fred saw the financial issues of this family, and then what happened to it following that, and what recommendations and ideas that he had. And any person that had that information could provide the kind of solutions to the problem, but you first have to be aware of what the problem is. So yes, Fred.